Right now on Weekend Dawn Review, Pride Month for the LGBTQIA+ community is not all about celebration. Many feel there are still large amounts of transformative work that needs to be done. Now, just last week, the show Cheeky Palette, a reality show which sees personalities come together for a dinner party where the guests' opinions are probed, premiered in One Magic. Hosted by Majota Gambule, obviously popularly known as Fat Joe, the show's guests include Gogo Dineo, Jerry Alston, Nabuntu Webster, Joshua Maponga, and Zwaibala. The conversation quickly moved from religion versus spirituality to homosexuality, which resulted in media personality Jerry Alston saying that the Bible categorically states that homosexuality is a sin. Now, although substantiating her argument, she came under fire by viewers, fans, members of the LGBTQIA+ community and activists who called her statement derogatory, discriminatory and inciting hate speech. It prompted several people to file complaints with the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Well, actor, radio personality, television producer and activist Lumko Johnson was amongst the group to publicly bring attention to this alleged offence by the episode, and now joins us to talk about Pride Month, hate speech and that controversial episode. Lumko, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dawn. I mean, obviously we've heard the BCCSA reports, coming through based on the homophobic nuances that had been shared on that television show. You watching that episode and what transpired, I mean, obviously alluding to the fact where the conversation escalated after questions about what the Bible stance is regarding homophobia and homosexuality for that matter. I mean, what was your take on that episode?
So, as someone who produces content for both radio and television, I question the motive, because you either are going to put content on a public platform intentionally, or you're going to be negligent about content.
Yeah.
So you're going to assemble a bunch of guests and have a discussion. But what I noticed also was the fact that we were fraudulently fed that the topic is, African spirituality. But the first question leads into homosexuality. And in your panel, you've got 6 people, 3 of which have been associated with homophobic utterances. One has even faced, the Human Rights Commission, the Equality Court. One is a pastor who said homosexuals can be cured or fixed. And you're going to lead into the conversation with that. It's only inevitable that you're going to reach some kind of controversy and, lead into homophobic utterances. So, what was the intention of the producers, of the actual conversation, of the broadcaster? Was the intention to incite controversy? Was the intention to upset us? Or was the intention to be homophobic? Or was this just gross negligence because no one actually thought or preempted that this could lead this way with the guests that were assembled?
And the key issue is obviously representation, as you mentioned, because it was not reflected in the panel on that particular episode. But I want to look at the constructs and the narratives at large plaguing the LGBTQIA+ community. Perhaps how that was a microcosm of some of the, stigmas and attitudes that the community continues to face, particularly in a month such as Pride Month.
Absolutely. And if you look at some of the stats that SADC has produced, the LGBTI community is one of the highest ranked when it comes to the suicide rates, because we live in a society where we are told we are not wanted. We are told there's something wrong with us. We are told there's something ugly. There's an ugliness about being queer, being homosexual, being transgender. Now, there's always the people who tell us that we are like that use texts, Bible texts, religious texts as justification for that. Now, children face bullying in schools every single day. We face bullying in workspaces. We are constantly aware of the prejudice that we are exposed to daily. If you're going to tell me that there's something wrong with me, I'm living a sinful life because your God says so, you are now telling the rest of the nation that it's okay to continue to put me through some kind of strife. It's okay to rape lesbians. It's okay to rape transgender people because your God says they are doing something wrong anyways. So you are justifying your prejudice and your bigotry using a religious text, because also these are your feelings, right? And you are unable to be homophobic or transphobic with your chest, so you would rather rely on some kind of reference that you can always refer to, because it gives you something to hide behind. So
And Lumko, in the same breath, and it obviously speaks to, the broader societal constructs of where this, these narratives come from. I mean, we do understand that Southern African communities at large are forged on the basis of faith communities when we see how we define sexuality and gender norms for that matter. When we look at the strides that have been taken in the country and Southern Africa at large, but also the challenges regarding engagements between religious and cultural systems at large in South Africa, what is emerging on that front in 2020?
There's a huge disconnect between what the Constitution has afforded us as the LGBTI plus community versus our lived realities, right? So from 1996, we've had the rights, and we've got same-sex marriages. We can adopt children. We can live a free life in my free South Africa, right? But on the ground, I still live fearfully. And now, as we see on the ground, I can switch on my television and I can have someone tell me that I'm living sinfully. So in a sense, our government has created a structure that allows us to live, because also it's the rule of law.
Yeah.
But the religious side of it and the cultural side of it hasn't come to the party. Because how do you justify something where the court says it's okay, but the priest doesn't?
And speaking of which, I mean, the role of media also plays a huge role in governing perceptions, and fueling some of those narratives that are, prevalent in South Africa or in the world to date. I just want to look at how the media has perhaps shaped some of those narratives, but also have taken the conversations forward, because ultimately this is what we're doing now. So there was controversy on the one end, but through other platforms we're also able to have these robust discussions and challenge societal norms and perhaps what the ignorance or unconscious biases that exist. How would you fare that in 2020?
I would say the best thing that's come out of this is just the conversation around it, the conversation on social media, the conversation this conversation. Yeah. And there's a role the media has to play and has to play robustly when it comes to representation, especially of minority groups. There's a responsibility to be responsible and to be intentional with the messaging that we are sharing. Children watch this content. Yeah. This show aired, before Watershed, so it's on primetime television. It's the entire family is watching, and you are sharing a message and you're instilling a message on people who are still forming their identity, whether queer or not. You still, and it's whether it's print or it's broadcast media. There's a responsibility to always be fair. And to be non-judgmental.
So, Lumko, in the interest of time, we're running out of time. Yeah. What do you want to see happen? I mean, in your personal capacity, what do you want?
I think Cheeky Pilot owes South African queer people, the LGBTI community of South Africa, an apology. I think there needs to be some kind of recourse from the BCCSA, because this is hate speech. And there needs to be some kind of accountability taken by the production and by the broadcaster, because they put this content on there. It's a pre-recorded show. Several people watched that and approved it and put it on air. Someone needs to take responsibility for that.
Value chain.
Yeah, and someone needs to be accountable for that.
Well, Lumko, there's a saying that says, I am because we are, and since we are, I am. Thank you for echoing your sentiments. Obviously, as we bring these conversations to the fore, rewrite those narratives and create a more inclusive South Africa for all. Thank you for your time. That was media personality Lumko Johnson talking to us about Pride Month, LGBTQIA+ rights. And of course, Cheeky Pilot, it must be noted that Fat Joe was invited for an interview to which his PA said he is very busy and would not be available. Jerry Alston said that she would not be taking interviews on the matter as well, and the producers of the show, Cheeky Pilot, were unable to be reached for comment.